To give a concise overview of the qualitative findings yielded from our integrative review, we briefly go through each of the 8 topics identified as centrally addressing early literacy. Although there was tremendous diversity in terms of how and what was studied within the overarching sample, 4 noteworthy patterns were found using this wide-angle lens. Studies focused on interventions, teachers, families, and assessment. Both intervention studies and studies involving multilingual populations characterized the phonemic awareness sample. Of the intervention studies reviewed, 6 used commercially available programs as the intervention. Phonics was frequently included as one of multiple factors examined in the studies sampled, but those studies identified as centrally about phonics clustered around program implementation studies and descriptive studies characterizing developing patterns or various factors correlated with early literacy learning. Reading fluency has been determined to be a predictor of later reading problems. The studies sampled reflected that idea, with numerous studies focused on interventions for students who were having, or were predicted to have, difficulties with reading. A main issue examined in these studies was the vocabulary of English learners. Thus, many of the instructionally oriented studies tended to take an early intervention or solve the problem approach to instruction. Reading comprehension research clustered at grades 1 through 3. A recurrent theme was the examination of one specific factor to better understand how that factor correlated to children's reading comprehension. Writing studies tended to be descriptive in nature, and more than in any other area, examined technology in some way. However, there was little by way of definable content patterns to what was studied or what was learned about early writing, development, or instructional practices. Digital literacies represented the smallest sample. Almost half of the sample employed descriptive methodologies, a design conducive to work in an emerging field. Only at the midpoint of the time period for this review were devices such as the Chromebook and smartboards introduced. Tablets with touchscreen technology became available later, in 2010. This integrative review led us to the general conclusion that the early literacy research of 2006 to 2015 can best be described as a period of gradual accumulation of additional knowledge, rather than a time of any substantive theoretical or methodological shifts, as were characteristic of the 1980s or 1990s. This description held both for the field overall and for each of the 7 aspects of early literacy that were examined. As we think about the next such review, we suspect that the coming decade of early literacy will exhibit more dramatic changes, largely because of 2 factors. First, the game-changing developments in technologies that create new opportunities for young children's participation in digital literacies. And second, the emerging multimodal research methodologies that are already being applied to yield significant new insights.